Welcome to the Tuesday Review. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Callum.
And tonight we're continuing our review of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. This is part 3 of the review. So if you haven't...
Part 3 of question mark.
What do you mean?
No, like we don't know how long it's going to take to digest everything.
Oh, yeah, part 3 of... Yeah, who knows?
Question mark.
Well, that's a good point, actually. I've got so many notes. We might have to do a part 4, but I'm going to try and get everything done now in part 3. So yeah, if you haven't heard parts 1 and parts 2, definitely go back and listen to those. And of course, I uploaded all the old Star Wars reviews we did, so go back and listen to those if you already haven't. And also, like a year ago when the Rise of Skywalker teaser trailer came out, we did like a breakdown and discussion surrounding that. So listen to that episode of the Tuesday Review as well. That'll, fill in a lot of... And we had a good conversation around that. And yeah, so be sure to check out those. Spoiler warning, just in case. If you haven't seen Rise of Skywalker,
Don't bother.
don't bother. But
If you want to be informed, go watch it beforehand.
yeah. Also spoilers for every other Star Wars property in existence, except for maybe The Mandalorian, because Callum hasn't finished it yet. But I will mention a couple of things, but they won't ruin the show. So maybe very mild spoilers for Mandalorian and major spoilers for Rise of Skywalker and every other Star Wars thing. All right, so still got a million notes. Nathan, you can see me scrolling.
I see me. He's scrolling. He's scrolling.
You stay see me scrolling.
Oh, Lord, he's scrolling.
Like just it never ending. So I'm just going to try and go through all the notes, and yeah, we'll hopefully get the Rise of Skywalker review done in this episode. But I think it's also because it's not just a review of Rise of Skywalker, it's a review of the trilogy and the saga and Disney and like the whole surrounding. So yeah, we'll see how we go. One thing, I think we've already sort of talked about this, but like kids growing up now, or who have, grown up in the last 10, 15 years, all they know is Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Because literally, like, Marvel movies have been, like, for the last 10 years, it's like, that's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas,
that's the
like,
blockbuster.
That's
yeah.
the cinema experience.
Yeah. It's like, we grew up just before that, and so we
have some vague memories of A Better Time,
Yeah.
Golden Fields.
Yeah. I mean, it's... you can't even say... I mean, you can. It's definitely better. But, I love MCU, and, like, it's kind of cool to have the MCU. But what I'm saying is kids now, that's what they've grown up with.
Yeah.
Like, the MCU, they don't remember a time before the MCU.
No, that's right.
Like, they can't imagine superhero movies that weren't part of, like, that.
Yeah, everything has that feel to it. Like, it has that formula.
Yeah, the formula, exactly. Yeah, it's like there's...
So there's an expectation that
Yeah.
the big action-packed blockbusters should follow that
Yeah.
formula.
And that's why, like, and that makes sense why Disney is trying to...
Yeah.
And because that is so successful... But I just, I always say in other reviews, especially Last Jedi, it's like, it's for non-fans, or it's for fans who don't really care, or who care but don't really understand. And like, I make a lot of assumptions and stuff. But what happened the other day shocked me. And so I had to share it with the listeners, because I was like, it kind of proved my point. Was my sister... she's never seen any of the Star Wars movies. I mean, she saw them when she was a kid while I was watching them.
Yeah.
By being around. But, she doesn't care. She hates fantasy. She doesn't like sci-fi. She doesn't really like movies in general. There's a few movies she loves, but she's got her main favorites, but otherwise she doesn't know really. She hasn't seen Force Awakens or Last Jedi, but she went with her boyfriend to see Rise of Skywalker, and she texted me afterwards, and she's like, I actually really liked it. And I was like...
You just responded with, don't come home.
Yeah, I was just like, wait, but can you tell me what was going on? Because I've seen all the movies, and I don't know what was going on.
What did she say?
And she's like, I kind of knew who all the characters were, and I kind of... But I think that proved my point is, like, these movies are nonsense. It's pure spectacle. It's purely like you sit there, you munch on your popcorn, and you go, haha, fun, explosions.
Yeah.
Lightsabers, look.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And like, but this, like I said that about Force Awakens, I said that about the other movies, even Last Jedi, which was very divisive. Like, even that was just dumb spectacle. But this time, like, Rise of Skywalker is like the epitome of just like flashing lights. It's the equivalent of the laser for a cat.
You know what it is?
You know what I
I don't
mean?
mean this.
Yeah.
I don't want this to sound negative.
Yeah.
But it's like these movies have ADHD.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? It's like
Rise
they
of Skywalker was like a million movies in one, and each scene was like not even a scene. It was like a
It's overly produced.
yeah,
There's so much going on. There's so much CG. There's so much nonsense.
yeah.
That's what I mean. It's kind of like it has to do everything at once.
That's
But doing so, it does nothing.
we talked about in the Force Awakens review and Last Jedi. It's like the original movies. It's like they took their time, they
Yeah.
explained things, they developed the world and the characters, and the new movies are always rushing to get to the next scene, to get to the next place. It's like run,
to
yell,
show the
yell,
next
yell.
CGI
Yeah.
backdrop. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they can't just sit and talk
I mean-
because then they're afraid, people will compare us to the prequels, people will find us boring, kids who grew up with superhero movies won't like it.
The perfect example of this in Rise of Skywalker is the hyperlight skipping.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, and that's at the very start. It's like, look,
But-
here's some different CGI
Yeah,
things
Because we
just wanna
can't
show
travel
You.
anymore.
No, you know what I mean. It's like
Yeah,
here's some
but
quick CGI
it's
planets
all-
to capture your attention.
That's also indicative of how lazy they are
Yeah.
with how, like, it's just like, how are they going to escape? They just teleport randomly.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why didn't you come up with a cool action scene there? Or, why was that scene even there? We didn't need it. The movie could have started after that because that scene wasn't important except for a weird Muppet to tell them that there was a spy.
Yeah.
It's like we always say, like, all the interesting stuff happens off screen. It's like this movie could have started
Yeah.
40 minutes after it, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the first 40 minutes, get rid of that and just start it with like, we got to attack the bad guy's base,
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
nonsense.
Well, yeah. Look, we can spend the next 6-7 hours actually deconstructing all the plot problems.
Oh, I've got like I in like Last Jedi, I was like at the end of the review, I was just like, here are some nitpicky things, and I was like, I had a lot of those for this movie. I was like, I just cut them out. I was just like, we don't have time for that shit. We could do another 4 hours on just how like insane dumb this movie is. Oh god. Hey, when Rey goes to Tatooine and she rides the piece of metal down the sand, I was like, remember Force Awakens? Shit like that. And the fact that, nothing makes sense scene to scene. Another thing I really want to talk about is that people who unironically call Last Jedi critics man babies,
Oh yeah. Incels.
incels, stuff like that,
Yeah. Neckbeards.
are now criticizing The Rise of Skywalker the same way we were criticizing The Last Jedi.
Yeah. Yeah.
And are actually being like, see what they did there, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, well, now the shoe's on the other foot, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
You know how it felt to us.
You know, one thing I
Yeah.
will say, the one thing that I take deep comfort in, not comfort, but it's like a sense of, almost like a sense of loftiness, is all the people who are now defending Rise of Skywalker,
Yeah.
the best that they can come up with
Yeah.
is, don't think too hard, it's just fun.
Yeah.
There's no criticism,
That's the dumbest.
there's
yeah.
no defense of anything
But-
JJ does. It's, leave him alone.
That
He
happened-
just made a fun film.
That happened with Last Jedi, but in like a different way, where it was like, you don't actually get it because it.
Oh yeah, it's no. What I'm saying,
Yeah.
there's no kind of
But it's the
artistic
same-
defense.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
But that was the same defense of Force Awakens, of all J.J. Abrams movies. Like, don't think about it. It's just a fun. It's like that's the worst defense you can have of
I know.
anything.
It's like they know deep down, they know it's not good.
Yeah.
But like talking about, if you want to if you like Rise of Skywalker,
That's fine.
honestly, I wish I did. Like
Yeah.
we said before, I would
I've
love.
said that from the beginning.
Yeah,
I
I'd
wish
love-
I loved Force Awakens.
you imagine if-
I'll tell you a story after this.
Imagine living in a world where you're so excited because there's a new Star Wars movie coming out.
Yeah.
Instead of us who didn't even want to go.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm like,
yeah.
just it's good if you like it, but don't try and come up with
No.
any kind of
Yeah.
defense for it.
I'll tell you a story. I should have told this on the Force Awakens review years ago, and I keep forgetting to mention it, and I've never mentioned it on the show. When Force Awakens was about to come out, and I saw the trailer, and I was like, it doesn't look that good. I'm not really going to like it, but I think it'll be fun. It's Star Wars, and it's not the prequels. I had a little speckle of hope. But
As everyone did.
yeah, but most people were like, "Oh, it looks so great! I'm gonna go see it." I was just like, I'll see it a few days after it comes out. I'm sure it'll be fine. But a friend, Matt of the show, a friend of his who I didn't know, like bought a whole bunch of gold class tickets for the opening midnight showing and the 12:15 showing. Like he just bought a whole crap ton of tickets from each showing. at Jam Factory on Chapel Street. And he's like, anyone who wants to come, friends of friends, give me the money and I'll give you the ticket and we'll go together. And Matt was like, well, I'm going to go. Do you want to go? I was like, yeah, fine. So not too long before the release day, Matt's like, someone gave me like free tickets to a concert that night or something. And I was like, the concert finishes at 11:30 and I'm going to race down and get to the movie by 12. And I'm like, okay, are you sure?
Sounds a little bit...
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. I'm like,
How many
all right.
concerts has Matt been to? They're not easy to leave.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I'm gonna run to my car and get out the first out. I'm like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, I'll meet you there. I don't know any of his friends. These are like people I've never met before. I don't know. So I get there. I'm on my own. And I meet his friends, and they're all dressed like Jedis. There's one guy dressed like Darth Vader. Like no
so
shit.
you fit right in.
Like yeah. But like no shit. Like movie quality Darth Vader. Like not a store bought, costume.
Yeah, I remember that night, like that day, that night of hope.
Yeah.
Like we were there on the midnight launch.
Opening day, yeah.
Opening day. And like there's just palpable excitement in the crowd.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, people who looked, we'll say, a little bit less than trustworthy were there. I'm thinking like, oh no, they're going to cause trouble in the cinema. You know, they looked a bit rough. And like one of these guys turned around to us and he's like, oh man, I've been a Star Wars fan since I was a little kid and this is the best day of my life.
Yeah.
And we're just like, it really reaches all areas of...
Yeah, you should have seen there were all these people dressed in costumes and like, there was like a little BB-8 robot rolling around someone had and like everyone was having fun and talking. And these people I'd never met, I was talking to them. And it's like, all right, and it's getting closer to midnight. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to get popcorn now because then I don't have to stand in line and risk missing part of the movie. So I get like popcorn. I get like the collector's tub and the collector's cup. I'm just like, so I'm carrying like these two huge things under my arms and I'm like waiting and Matt still hasn't messaged me. I'm waiting and it's getting closer. And it's like 5 to midnight and we go up the stairs to where the cinema is and we're waiting. And the girl who had the tickets, she's like, where's Matt? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, he's texting me saying he's coming. It's like getting like, it's like 2 minutes to midnight. And it's like, oh, where is he? We're going in. And Matt like runs up and he gets there like right on 12 and we go in the cinema and the lady checking the tickets at the usher, she's like, oh, these are for the Rivoli Cinema or whatever. I can't remember where, in Hawthorne. I can't remember what the cinema was.
Oh my God.
It was a long time ago. I'm like, what? He had
Yeah.
bought the 12 tickets
For the wrong cinema.
Yeah, he had bought one for Jam Factory and one for the other cinema, and we were like, what the? And so we were like, what are we gonna do? It's like half an hour of ads and trailers, so it's like we might be able to make it. So we ran down to the car. Like everyone packed
your popcorn.
Like the guy dressed as Darth Vader had to like squish into the car, and I'm still got my popcorn and my drink like under my arm. Like we raced down, like it's midnight, so there's not a lot of traffic. So we raced like really fast. We got there, we go in the cinema, and they show the tickets like running in, and they're like, okay, you can because we had so many tickets, they're like, you can sit here or here. I'm just like, I'm sitting right here. Like I'm just like. Okay, we sat down just as like the Lucasfilm logo was coming and we're like, whew. I was like, and I also brought in the popcorn drink from the other cinema. It was like it was Village, so it's the same place. But anyway. So anyway, we watched the movie, and it ended, and
silence.
Yeah, I was like really, and I turned to Matt and I was like, what was that? It felt like a TV show. Like, what the hell was that? And everyone was just kind of like confused and I was just like, what? I was like, that wasn't very good. And some other people saying, oh, I really like this or I like that, but other people were like, not sure. The guy dressed as Darth Vader was fucking devastated. he wandered off. I never saw him ever again. I hope he's doing all right.
He's not.
Well, now definitely not. We walked out to the car and we were just like talking about, I was like, the prequels suck, but even, I think they had better elements and this movie was kind of cheap looking and yada, yada, yada. And we're driving home and one of the guys was like, oh, can you give me a lift? So we're giving him a lift. And he's like, oh, I guess it was better that we got there just in time and saw the whole movie and didn't like it then like got there late and missed a bit of it and didn't like it and then had to go back and watch. It's like
That's true.
and that was true. And it was like, yeah, and we were just kind of like, it was kind of devastated.
Yeah.
And then like got home like 3 or whatever in the morning, went to bed and couldn't sleep and got up late. And I can't remember. I think I ended up watching Spaceballs because I was like, I wanted to get the bad taste out of my mouth.
Yeah, same ballpark.
Yeah, and I was like, well, I'd already binged all the original trilogy, so I was like, I'm not going to rewatch them again. And I was like, I'll watch Spaceballs and getting the bad taste out of my mouth. It was like, I'm like watching Spaceballs. I'm like, this is a better written movie than Force Awakens. And anyway, the story after that of me reviewing the films and trashing them and yada yada. But my point is like, I wanted to like Force Awakens.
Everyone did. Yeah.
I had that. I always had that hope. Like, I was there for the atmosphere and the community. I want to love these new movies.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
go
no, of
in.
course.
Even Rise of Skywalker. I was like, I hope it's good.
Well, look. I'm not gonna lie. Next time a Star Wars movie comes out, I won't want to go see it.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go in there being like, it might be good. It's a fresh start. It's a fresh
If it's
film.
unconnected to what we've had so far,
Well,
Yeah,
especially if they
maybe.
do a separately connected trilogy. It's
Well,
a fresh
I mean,
blank
it
canvas.
goes back to what we were talking about before, though,
Yeah.
about the Marvel movie issue.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that more at length later. And like the damage is, I always say the damage
It's
has been
not just the
done.
damage to Star Wars; it's the damage to cinema.
True. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's and like I said, the kids who grew up now, that's all they know. So anyway,
We're joined in the studio by Alan. How you going, Alan?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
that's all right. So yeah, we'll jump back into because we got kind of derailed there, and I can't remember where I was. So I'm just going to go back to where I was in my
Essentially,
notes.
Callum was discussing the idea that if there's a future Star Wars movie, he doesn't want to see
I know.
it.
We're going to talk about that later.
No,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that later.
And
But
the
where
MCU issues.
where I was before I kind of went on my ramble about the Force Awakens story was like the shoes on the other foot with the people who love the Last
that's it.
Jedi and hate the Rise of Skywalker. And people who say they don't care what JJ was setting up in The Force Awakens and like that Ryan ignored all of that. And they now criticize JJ for bringing some of that stuff back. And it's like... But,
And
Like-
when people liked The Last Jedi because it changed Star Wars, it like changed who the characters were, what they stood for, and all this number of things. They like that. So now when JJ reverses it, they know how we felt when Ryan made
Exactly.
all of these sweeping changes.
taste their own medicine. And it's like people who loved The Force Awakens but have problem with Rise of Skywalker, it's the same problems. Like it's all
The only
same.
the only difference is The Force Awakens has less in it.
Yeah. So people who like love Force Awakens and now have the problems of Rise of Skywalker. It's like moving too fast, always rushing to get to the next thing, constant references, bordering on self-parody. I'm like, these are all the problems Force Awakens had, but you loved it back then. Because it's only now that it's so in your face, and after The Last Jedi threw everything out the window.
It's also, you know what it is? It's Rise of the Skywalker is like Force Awakens, but exaggerated.
Yeah.
It's like a much exaggerated version.
It's like
of
times, it's times
all
a
of
million,
all of the faults of The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Which, as you know, we've talked about on the show before. I actually didn't mind Force Awakens that much when it was isolated as its own film before the sequels. But when you take the faults of that movie and magnify them by 10, suddenly it's a lot more gratuitous.
Exactly. Especially, and now that it's the end of the...
Yeah, and like that's what you're left with.
This we've talked about this many times before, but a lot of people like The Force Awakens, but they were like, yeah, it doesn't explain to, but Last Jedi will explain, don't worry. They liked it back then, but now seeing that that Disney didn't have a plan, that this is where it ended up, it's like now they see what I saw back then.
Yeah.
Like it was clear to me then, but it's like only now that it's gotten this bad, are people starting to go like, oh, yeah, maybe they didn't have a plan. Oh, maybe the things they set up shouldn't have been paid off the way JJ.
Yeah.
It's like,
I think that a lot of these people, that's like you said. I mean, it's a combination of various things.
Yeah.
But you need to look at the original trilogy as a whole.
Yeah.
And then compare that to the new trilogy, and it's just a mess. And if people can't see that, and there are people who love all 3 sequel movies, and will like die with that opinion.
Yeah.
I'm like, you can't.
But then of course you'll get people being like, oh well, now the prequel trilogy is so good because you can see the overarching arc. I'm like, no, they're just as bad. It's just different problems. Like, please don't, But But, you know, we've talked about that as before. In 10 years, we'll get the Jar Jar movie of how great he is and everyone loves him.
Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix is Jar Jar.
Yeah, I'd be down for that. You know, and people saying The Rise of Skywalker tries too hard to please everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, was it though?
You know,
I don't even know if...
It had a lot of Muppets in it.
Like, cause I know even J.J. Abrams said, like, we can't please everyone, so why even try?
No, that's right.
So, like, I think even at this point, he was just like, let's just throw everything out. Like, I don't think it was trying to please anyone.
I think that my interpretation of that comment would be, like, they go to lots of different planets, lots of different locales, so everybody gets something.
Maybe.
There's a lot of puppets in it. Not a lot, but there's a few puppets. There's some new
Muppety.
droids.
Yeah.
Like, there's things that people point to and be like, oh, I like that, I like that, I like that.
Are we talking about? Is this talking about The Force Awakens or Rise of Skywalker?
Rise of Skywalker.
yeah,
Well, you can't please everyone because there's two camps. There's Force Awakens camp and the Last Jedi. It's basically you can't please everyone because Ryan, screwed the pooch, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, basically you have the two camps: people who like Last Jedi and people who don't.
That's true.
So you can't please everyone based on that alone.
Yeah, but I feel like JJ was trying to do so many different things that it's like people who say, "Oh, Rise of Skywalker is too fan servicey," which it is. But it's also like so insane. I'm like, it's for everyone and no one, and that's the same.
JJ.
That's the same problem Last Jedi had.
Yeah,
It's crazy how similar these movies are, even though they're so wildly different.
And it's also a larger scale problem with cinema as well that we'll probably be having a little bit more on later. But it's just movies now are made to. Like a board.
Everyone,
They're made to please everyone. They hit all the bases without focusing on anything.
China.
and of course,
exactly.
Thing,
They have to please.
Rogue One had 2 Chinese characters.
Movies with certain diversity in,
Because-
say, the gay and lesbian community.
Yeah.
Their representation. I'm using air quotes in the studio.
Yeah.
They're filmed in certain scenes that are easily be able to be cut out later on.
Exactly.
So it's not real representation.
It's like which markets do we have to sell to? How do we sell to all of them without changing without changing the product? You compromise at the script stage, or where you.
Well, there's a good South Park joke of them writing a script and
it's
having
like a Chinese general
standing over them. He's like, no,
can't
fix
do
this,
that.
can't fix this.
But then there's the fact that apparently Rise of Skywalker had tons of reshoots. So I feel like J.J. Abrams was doing his thing, but then you also had Disney and Kathleen Kennedy being like, you can't go too far. And
that actually brings up... Sorry, James, go on.
No, I was just going to say...
Cut.
No. That's, no.
I was going to go on to that.
I learned about that just today.
Yeah, me too.
That there's a conspiracy theory that J.J. Abrams has a wildly different movie locked away that Disney won't let him release.
That's what I was getting at, is there's the J.J. Abrams vision, if you can even say he had a vision. Then you've got Disney's version... and they're forcing him to reshoot, and even rumors of them forcing him to put the Emperor in there, which I don't know how true that is. But I'm like, these are the same problems I had with Last Jedi, where it felt like Rian Johnson was making a personal film, where he was just screw everything, I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah.
But also he had mandated studio notes that he had to stick to.
It even makes me second guess how much Rian Johnson wanted to make a bad movie like this, like The Last Jedi.
No, don't. I don't
definitely,
Don't even go close to defending that man.
Yeah, but
I'm not defending him. I'm just saying how much studio interference.
It's
I know. Obviously, it was the consistent, persistent rumor of one draft.
Yeah.
But how much of the decisions are actually made by the directors these days, especially in the Disney machine?
That's what I'm saying. Is it's such a weird thing where it's at the end of the day. Like I said with The Last Jedi, it's a Disney factory film. They're churning it out. It doesn't matter who you get to write and direct it because they're going to shape it at the end. And even J.J. Abrams, who I'm assuming was on pretty good terms with Disney, even they were a bit wary of what he was doing. And so they're like, maybe we can change it and make our own cut. And that might be why the film is so crazy, is because J.J. Abrams was trying to do so many different things. And then you had Disney coming in and being like, you can't do this, but you have to put this in. You can't do that, but you have to... So it ends up feeling like it's not just too many cooks. It's too many ingredients, too many cooks, too many customers, too many everything.
And the serving sizes are not big enough.
Yeah, some of them are too big, some of them too small. The cutlery is like always bent and like
it's like one of those. It's like one of those spoons with a hole in the bottom. It's
yeah.
I get a little bit of food every time.
Yeah, it's like it's just god, it's such a mess. But yeah, then I heard of, like there's a J.J. Abrams cut. It's like
that's we should say that's mythological.
This is all rumors.
It's not like partial rumor like the Snyder cut.
No, the Snyder cut.
Snyder cut's a thing.
Zack Snyder shared the photo with the world of the Snyder cut.
Yeah.
The
Abrams cut of Rise of Skywalker is like a mythological
It's like
rumor.
mental gymnastics to explain why the movie sucks.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, people don't want to actually talk about why the movie sucks, but they want to come up with a reason where everyone's absolved from fault.
But what's interesting as well is when I heard about this Abrams cut, I was like, what's more likely? J.J. Abrams went completely insane? or he made a bad movie and then Disney came in and made it even worse.
The latter.
So I guess the Abrams cut makes more sense, but who knows? But then
does the Abrams cut have a chimpanzee repairing a helmet? We don't know.
This is another point. People always like quick to blame Disney. Disney's the problem. It wasn't J.J. Abrams' fault. It wasn't Rian Johnson's fault. It's always Disney's fault. I'm like, no. It's still the writer and director's fault. This happened when Spider-Man 3 came out, and people were like, the studio meddled. It wasn't Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi was a saint. And I'm like, I love Sam Raimi as much as the next guy, but you have to blame him for all the shitty choices he made in Spider-Man 3. Emo Spider-Man, you can't blame that on the studio.
That was a great time, all right? Emo Spider-Man with the dancing and everything. Well,
keep in mind,
it represented all of us in a certain period of our lives.
Keep in mind, I will say that this predates meme culture. Yeah. So you can't say, it was good because of meme culture, because that came way later.
And that's the other thing. Yeah, now that memes have come, all the Spider-Man memes have come out, Raimi memes, and so people are like, it's actually really good. It's the same with prequel. Prequel memes came out, and they're like, the prequels are really good.
Just because we can laugh at it in retrospect doesn't mean it's good.
No. But then you've got like Colin Trevorrow, who was supposed to direct Rise of Skywalker, and I'm like, well, I hate Colin Trevorrow because he made Jurassic World, which I hate. But it's like then you've got the Disney problem of like getting a new director with each film. I'm like, so his version would have sucked, but apparently his version didn't have the Emperor, so it's like, was J.J. Abrams even trying to set that up from the beginning?
Wouldn't it be
even if he was, he didn't tell anyone.
If they released the scripts of all the different directors who didn't get the cut.
They never will, but that would be really interesting.
Like a summary of the stories. So we can point at that one and be like, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. But like, that's the thing is like, it's such a mess.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who to blame. Disney is to blame, but also, like I said, you have to blame the writer and director.
That's right.
Who took it in a direction that it shouldn't have gone in.
Nobody forces... It's ultimately, I would say, more than 50% of the blame for how the trilogy pans out can be laid at the feet of Rian Johnson, because J.J. Abrams, Force Awakens or not, he set up some key plot points.
I think
Rian Johnson...
But see, this is...
but Rian Johnson took those plot points...
And then shat on them.
But he really warped the trajectory of them. So when it was time... As you said, if they kept Rian Johnson for the third film, we might have had some consistency.
Yeah.
No, he wouldn't.
No, it would have been shit.
Well, yeah.
He would have just been spiteful.
But then he could have followed on from Last Jedi.
My point is...
So then it would have been consistency at least with 2 films.
Yeah, my point isn't about the quality of the movies. My point is about... the trajectory the story goes in.
Because it goes back to the analogy you were making earlier about the restaurant. It's more like, all right, it's a 3-course meal that you're sitting down to, and they fire the chef after the first course.
Yeah.
So it becomes, you have maybe some kind of Western dish, you're eating Japanese food up next, and then bam, you're expecting some kind of Japanese dessert, but then they pull it on you again.
Yeah.
They're like, oh no, we brought the other chef.
But also, not only that, but they keep changing the ingredients while the new chef comes in, and it's like, he doesn't know what
the
he's
waiter's
making.
walking to you and he changes like 8 times.
Yeah.
No, but
he drops on the floor and scrapes it back on the plate and just serves it to you.
My point is, if Disney had one cohesive vision for the trilogy, it would not have been as bad as it is.
But that's
now.
the thing. So it's like you have to blame Disney, but also you have to blame J.J. Abrams for setting up a bunch of things he didn't really know what he was setting up, and keeping a lot of things hidden and mystery box bullshit when he should have just flat out said, "Here's Rey's parents. Here's where the First Order came." Like, he should have. Here's Snoke. Like, he shouldn't, because then Rian Johnson would have been forced to take that on instead of being like, well, he didn't explain it, so I can explain it, or not explain
Yeah,
it.
no, that's true. That's fair. Also, Disney should have been... Kathleen Kennedy herself should have been more forceful with Rian Johnson.
We talked about it many times.
Yeah, like she should have said, no, this is... I want you to go in this direction.
Yeah,
like,
we talked about it.
He works for her, not the other way around.
But it's the same with J.J. Abrams. She should have said, like, look, Last Jedi fucked some things up. You need to now take it in this. So, but she, like...
Maybe this is just a big troll on all Star Wars fans to get them to stop asking for new shit. Ever think about that?
You know why I say that's
Disney...
It still made them enough money, right?
I was going to say, that's, the reason that's false is because they made bank.
Exactly. Disney wants to make money, so they want to appease everyone.
Oh, you can't appease everyone.
That's
not in this culture.
You know what half of the problem is maybe Disney's starting to wake up to the fact that the way they do movies is just like television, and that's why they're finishing this up and they're going to The Mandalorian.
Yeah, well, I got notes about that later. How I think they finished the Skywalker saga now, and they're like, phew, got that out of the way. Now we can just turn Star Wars into Marvel.
Yeah.
They're like, we're free to just do a interconnected series of movies without having to connect it to the
Skywalkers.
the prequel, the prequels and the original trilogy.
Finally have a trilogy on Jar Jar Binks, and it'd be great, and everyone will love him. Come back to him.
But yeah, like, because Rian Johnson's thing was like, don't cater to fans. You think you want it, but you don't. It was kind of, and it was like, fuck you. And then you got JJ, who's like, you have to cater to fans, just give people what they want. And I'm like, neither of them understand the source material or how to make something interesting or how to develop from the originals to the sequels. Like, you have to understand the rules of the universe before you can break them.
Yeah.
Or before you can expand upon them. So both the nostalgia guy and the fuck you guy were like completely wrong.
That's basic,
on different levels.
It's basic screenwriting.
Yeah.
Understand it.
Everyone is at fault.
This sounds like a joke, but believe me when I say that it's not a joke. They need to learn some lessons from our boy Sylvester Stallone. And I'm not talking about Rambo.
Oh yeah, he fucked
I'm talking about Creed.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Take your lessons from...
he didn't write Creed though.
No? Oh.
Did he?
I'll look that up.
Look that up. I don't think he did. I think Ryan Coogler...
The Escape Plan 2?
China wrote Escape Plan 2.
Yeah.
That's another, They made a third one. Are you guys going to watch a third one?
Yeah. No. Apparently it's like back to basics, so it might be right.
Nah, Coogler wrote it.
Yeah, see, Ryan Coogler. See, but Ryan Coogler's the director who understood the originals and understood how to make a long-awaited sequel.
Maybe get Coogler to write the next Star Wars.
I would be down for that. But then you have the Black Panther problems where the action and CGI was really bad, but everything else was pretty good, so... And that's all Disney, again. But, we won't spoil it, but the Watchmen series on HBO...
Whoa, get Lindelof to make Star Wars. Yes!
He understands the source material.
And he subverts it appropriately.
He can subvert it.
Yeah. Without ruining
Exactly. Because he understands what to subvert, what to make jokes of, what to make serious... how to develop ideas from the original and bring it into the modern era.
I thought it was pretty funny with Watchmen how it says co-created by Dave Gibbons.
Oh, we talked about this. Yeah, Alan Moore doesn't have his name on it. Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, to subvert something, you have to understand it in the first place, and you have to understand what that subversion means, and you have to make sure that subversion isn't going to have a ripple effect on an entire franchise.
Which is not an easy task, especially with Watchmen, because that already is a subversion of superhero comics itself.
Exactly. So it's like a double subversion.
Yeah.
Cobra Kai also does it well.
Yeah, it can be done. It can be done. You just need to care.
Yeah, you need to care. You have to have passion for this. You have to have passion for the source material, but you also have to understand it.
Yeah, which is the big problem.
And you have to understand why it worked and why, if you're going to do it differently, that might not work.
I mean, I've said it so many times on the show, and I'll say it again just because it helps illustrate the point, is most people today think Star Wars is ships, lightsabers, and the Force. It's not the settings. It's not like, it's, as we said, it's an adventure, it's a romance, it's swashbuckling. Yes, it's also it has Eastern and samurai influences too, yes. But don't make a movie like the new ones where it's just lasers. Ships and the Force. People are criticizing The Mandalorian because it's too Western. It's not Eastern enough. I'm like, you can make that argument if you want. But The Mandalorian understands Star Wars more than.
Oh, it's definitely better than all the new movies. Yeah, it has problems, which we'll talk about. But I think the thing with the original Star Wars and why it's so special and why it's so great is because it balances so many things. It's like the spinning plates. It's it's doing that. It's doing old samurai movies. It's doing old westerns. It's doing old World War II movies. It's doing
pirate movies.
It's doing pirate movies. It's doing high fantasy. It's doing Lord of the Rings and Dune. It's doing hard sci-fi. It's doing soft sci-fi. It's doing so many different things, and yet everything perfectly balances and makes sense. And then you get the new movies and the prequels and the cartoons and all that, and it's like they're just picking certain things out, and the plates start wobbling and start falling and smashing, and and the Mandalorian, which we'll talk, has that problem, but not to the same extent as the movies. I kept calling Kerry Russell's character Zora, but her name's Zori, but it doesn't fucking matter.
Correction.
Quick correction. She's introduced and then disappears, so it doesn't. Babu Frick, who we talked about, how
our favorite Eastern European Muppet.
Yeah, it's a drunk Eastern European man. Very small Muppet. And also, how we always talk about, like, they keep introducing all these Muppets, and people are like, well, that's how it was in the original trilogy, and I'm like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, there were a lot of people in Star Wars.
But there's like the puppets in the original trilogy weren't trying to look like Sesame Street characters, whereas it seems like they're trying to make them look as ridiculous as possible.
This isn't the Dark Crystal.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're not inhabiting their own, like, Sesame Street world. It's like they're inhabiting the live action world with people in it, so it's a different thing. But yeah, Babu Frick, I was like, he's he's hilarious, but he's the worst, and I hate him. And he's indicative of the problems of the the quote unquote practical effects in the new movies. And it was kind of like how remember Men in Black International with the little Kamal Nanjiani's character, the little guy. And I was like,
it wasn't as bad as everyone said it was.
He's the best. Oh, it's terrible. Don't get me started. But he was the best character, and also I wanted him cut out of the movie. It's that kind of thing. Whereas Babu Frick's awesome, but he's a piece of shit, and I hate him and get rid of him. That's kind of the Disney movies in a nutshell. It's like something's cool, but it shouldn't be there, and get rid of it. But also another thing we always talk about is how the aliens and that, they don't look like they're from Star Wars.
No,
They've completely cut out the original species.
Yeah, don't let me stand on my soapbox.
Yeah, where's the toilet?
There's no. It's like you keep calling it historical revisionism.
Revisionist history. Yeah, Disney's revisionist history. I got a section on that.
Someone up in Disney, probably Kathleen Kennedy, does not like the original aliens, and they're pretty much...
I don't think it's even that. We've talked about. We've had this discussion many a time.
You know the obvious problem with the Twi'leks, though.
Yeah, I'm like,
it's too erotic for the family audience.
Well, maybe, but
tentacles.
Not on Mandalorian, which is on Disney Plus, which is for the family.
No, but there's no Mandalorians, there's no Rodans. Instead, they make up new alien races, which frankly are inferior.
Yeah, but it's part of Disney's revisionist history. We talked about this off air. I don't think we ever talked about it on air. Disney's new Galaxy's Edge theme park. It's this, this huge thing. It's like the Millennium Falcon's there, and it's like it's all made to look like the original trilogy. Everything's kind of dirty and like rusty, and it's kind of made to look like in originals. But nothing in Galaxy's Edge is from the original movies. There's no.
I still want to go.
But everything from it is from the sequel. It's Disney's approach to Star Wars in a nutshell. Use the originals for nostalgia. Use the brand name. Use the built-in love for the built-in fan base and love for the property.
But don't show them.
But erase it from existence. And that's what and we talked about. The Rise of Skywalker does that. By having the Emperor return, negating the originals and even the prequels, negating Anakin's sacrifice and negating Luke's victory and the Rebels' victory, and so it's a revisionist bullshit. But anyway, I got kind of off track. Babu Frick is voiced by Shirley Henderson, who played Moaning Myrtle in the Harry Potter movies, and I'm like, this is the problem: is all the aliens and that they look like they could be from any Fantastic Beasts or just generic crappy sci-fi. And I find it funny that the funny little drunk man is voiced by Moaning Myrtle. It's like it plays into that Disney. Yeah, it's I don't know know how to describe it.
No, I know what you mean. It's like there's an isness to it. I know that sounds weird, but there's definitely a thing they do. Yeah, like you can't. I wouldn't know how to articulate this particular point. But it's definitely on their brand.
It's part of their saccharine image that is actually soulless and
it's that fake smile.
Yeah, exactly. It's the dead eyes. You know,
Yeah.
you got a big grin, but you got the dead eyes.
Yeah.
Also, J.J. Abrams voices Dio, which now we've been discussing of whether he's crazy or whether there was too much studio meddling and you know where is the arrow pointing. I'm like, the fact that he voices that piece of shit goes more to he was insane. Jetpacks. We didn't really talk about the action scene in the desert where they're getting chased by the motorbikes and then the First Order jetpack troopers fly off the back and it kind of lifts up. It's dumb. And also, they're not speeder bikes. They're like motorbikes with like tracks and wheels, which is weird. Again, not Star Wars. But it's like we talked about how the action in the new movies, like it's not creative. It's not interesting. It's just like a lot of quick cuts and CGI shit flying around. If you're going to have jetpacks, which haven't really been explored a lot in the movies, like have a cool action scene involving vertical fighting or, you know, some sort of, you know, jumping movements, you know. So I'll talk about that more in the next episode when we talk about how we would fix Star Wars, because I got ideas about that.
That could be a podcast on its own.
They do that.
Oh no, that's going to be 2 separate episodes after this. But
they do that sort of vertical combat a little bit in The Mandalorian.
A little bit, but I'm saying, like, if you're going to have an action set piece, make it really well choreographed. You know, don't just have guys yelling and throwing stuff at each other and CGI shit flying around. It's the original. Why the original movies are so great. The AT-ATs, the way they have to take them down is by shooting a harpoon and
tripping them up,
them over. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Haven't seen that before. You know, then we get the speeder bike chase in Return of the Jedi. We've never really seen something like that before. You know, it's always one-upping itself.
Dodging them trees.
Yeah. And then you got the sequel trilogy, the Disney stuff. It's just like guys flying and yelling and CGI stuff flipping around, and there's nothing creative. There's no different...
Yeah.
You know? And because they're using the same vehicles from the original trilogy... It's like just that again, you know, there's nothing new. You know, like even non-Star Wars movies, like John Wick 3, when we reviewed that, it was like, I really liked that movie, but the best action scene in it was with the doggos. Because it was so wildly different.
Danger Boys.
Than anything we had seen before. It was like dogs jumping up and attacking guys. It was
dogs doing parkour. I'd never seen that before.
And then after that scene, it just becomes shooting again. And it's like the action scenes kind of feel a bit stale.
Sorry, Carl. That's parkour. I was going to say parkour.
Oh, God. Oh, man. But you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. Action's not done that well anymore.
Yeah. And because there's no emotional weight to it and I don't care about the characters, that's another layer of... But anyway, this is leading towards something that I've always wanted to talk about on the Star Wars episodes, but I didn't know how to articulate it. And I was talking to my friend Damien, and he put it into words so I could finally discuss it. So ever since The Force Awakens came out, I had this problem. But like I said, I didn't know how to express it. So in the original trilogy, the lightsaber fights are like traditional fencing. Yeah. They're broadsword fights. Like it's like knights.
Medievalish.
Yeah, it's Errol Flynn swashbuckling. You know, fighting down the staircase. You know, Adventures of Robin Hood kind of thing. And that's what Star Wars is. That's what the Jedi are. You know, that it makes sense. Then George Lucas comes and ruins that with the prequels, and he's just like, no, it's just martial arts. Like, it's just flipping.
There's superheroes with martial arts.
Yeah, and it's like the Duel of Fates, you know, at the end of Phantom Menace, the fighting is cool, but it doesn't feel like Star Wars. Like, all the flipping and, you know, and all that stuff. And because I don't care about what's going on, that's, you know, the other thing. But so he changes what the action in Star Wars is. Then you get the sequels who are trying so hard to not be the prequels that they're like, well, we're going to be like the original movies again. So the lightsaber fights are going to be slower and heavier and more like the originals. And people are like, oh, that's so great. I love it. And I've always been like, since The Force Awakens, and this carried on into the other movies, I'm like, no, there's something wrong with it. It doesn't feel like the original movies. It doesn't feel like fencing. It doesn't...
Is that because they all have really interesting sword designs? Like they keep changing what a lightsaber can do.
And that's the other thing. We just talked about how they keep changing the Force and keep changing lightsabers. But the problem, which Damien articulated this for me, he's like, in the new movies, it looks like they're trying to hit each other's swords. They're not actually fighting each other. They're not actually trying to kill each other. They're clearly choreographed to stop short of the sword here. Hit the sword. Yeah. Stop. And J.J. Abrams and fans who liked that saw that and said, well, it looks like the old movies where it's like old sword fighting. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. But I didn't know how to articulate it until Damien said, it's because they're like stopping themselves.
Yeah, in Return of the Jedi, the sword fight at the end of Return of the Jedi.
It's fucking brutal.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's so much feeling there. They're not trying to have a dance battle with lightsabers. It's a very weighty thing where they're trying to strike each other.
Yeah, and it feels heavy. Like it feels like a broadsword crashing into armor when Luke is like smashing, wailing on Darth Vader. Or remember the bit where Darth Vader throws his lightsaber and it cuts, and Callum was like, "Holy shit!" Like that was awesome.
Yeah, because you haven't seen anything like that until Return of the Jedi, and then he just like zoom.
Yeah, and then he walks down the steps and he just has the lightsaber in his hand. You don't even see him pick it up. It's fucking awesome. And you get to the new movies, and it looks like they're like stopping short of each other, and and it looks like they're trying to make the swords look heavy, and it looks so fake. And I'm glad that I could finally articulate that.
Yeah. How do you feel, Alan? How do you feel about the combat in Star Wars?
I'm, for some reason...
You still haven't watched the originals, have you?
No, I have.
Okay, good.
But I haven't watched them properly.
No.
So it's not my fault. It's also the fault of the television studios, or not studios, the television channels that have this massive hard-on for Empire Strikes Back. Not that I'm saying it's the wrong thing to do, but they always play that. Like, majority of the time when you see a Star Wars movie being played, it's always Empire Strikes Back. And I'm like... I kind of need to see A New Hope first, and then we can kind of progress.
Yeah.
And once in a while, they do Return of the Jedi. Once in a while. So
they used to play that all the time, and then they stopped.
Yeah, so it was hard to kind of, as a poor man with just a TV, whose dad would turn it off at 11 p.m. because it was too late. It's hard to work out. When you were discussing the entire kind of lightsaber combat and everything, I was just kept getting reminded of a really bad Indian television show where the guy's a superhero. And he has a lightsaber. Like that is.
I love Indian movies. They just rip off everything, and there's just no care for like copyright or anything. It's just like,
hey, India does the world's work, all right.
They
have the best. They have the best generic drugs. Like pharmaceutical...
they rip everything off, not just
like all these. Yeah, no, copyright infringement. Well, they don't care about any copyright infringement.
I mean, that's like copyright infringement for like the good of
for the good of mankind.
But
there's plenty of also bad copyright
look, there's bad copyright infringement, of course. We're not endorsing copyright infringement. But there's areas where India does the world of good.
Yeah, no, it's...
But sword fights, they suck now.
Yeah,
But I do recall from what I watched of the original trilogy... As you said many a time, the lightsaber duels themselves, they weren't very common. It was a special thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I remember even in what was it, Rise of Skywalker, when Rey's on a little training montage on the thing, she whips out the lightsaber for no reason. She's got
they use them as flashlights too.
Exactly. Everyone just ignites lightsaber and runs around with it.
It's a dangerous tool.
And she's in a forest.
Yeah.
Don't be playing with lightsabers.
Cutting down trees. Also, we've talked about that before. Like John Williams' score for the sequel trilogy, it's been kind of tired. Can't blame him, but it doesn't have the same oomph as the originals. And even the prequels, as terrible as they are, the music in those movies is phenomenal. Like, those soundtracks are incredible. Duel of Fate's still incredible. So, at the end of it all, as bad as the prequels were, the soundtrack, the score was so, so good. And the sequel trilogy can't even say that about, There's no real The only recognizable theme is Rey's theme, and that sounds more like a Harry Potter song.
It does, yeah. I've noticed that. Has that real, like, ephemeral, magical kind of thing going on. Yeah.
Also, we talked about this. I think we were joking about it off air. I don't think we ever mentioned it on air. You know how like Luke farts himself to death at the end of The Last Jedi, and it's like he forced so hard that he floated away. And someone on Twitter or somewhere on Reddit was like, maybe he died not because he forced so hard, but because of the milk he drank, it was sour. It's like it went bad.
He drank some milk in the Last Jedi.
He drank that titty
I was
milk.
going to be confused in the studio.
Yeah.
No, I remember.
You remember the
blue
milk's
milk,
there?
He's
Yeah,
just quite proud of himself and he's wiping off his chin.
yeah, which was so weird. Ugh. But yeah, I like that theory that he actually just like
He died of food poisoning.
yeah, he did fight himself to death, but not in the same way we said he
it
did.
was lactose related.
Oh yeah, okay. So this is another point that I think is really important. The legacy characters, the original trilogy characters, they're used as a gimmick in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Their plan was Force Awakens is Han's movie, Last Jedi is Luke's movie, and Rise of Skywalker is Leia's movie.
Yeah.
Like, that's a gimmick. Why the fuck are you wasting time with these, not developing and showing these characters?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, have them all be in the first movie, have them interact with the new generation of heroes.
And then hand the torch down.
And as the movies go on, they become less of a focus.
Yeah, of course.
That makes sense. But of course, they, like with everything that Disney does, it's like the original trilogy is used purely for gimmicky nostalgia.
Yeah.
Remember. It's like they didn't know how to write a story.
No.
So-
what's that Kathleen Kennedy quote? Do you know how hard it is to come up with original material?
Yeah.
I'm like,
there was no books,
there were
no
book. I'm like,
comics to go.
because you decanonized them all.
We'll talk about that later.
Not
It's
even
like-
that. Even if they decanonize them all, so what? They still
Yeah,
maintain
They don't
absolute
exist anymore?
authority to take a book and be like, "This is now a
But
movie."
I think we talked about this where I was like, even if the EU didn't exist and there was no Star Wars
Yeah.
books, no Star Wars comics, no Star Wars video games, the original Star Wars is such a rich, vibrant,
That's right.
like fantasy world. Are you telling me you can't come up with an idea set
exactly.
in that?
They can't. I mean, look, they came up with these ideas after Return.
This is the problem with Disney is they don't have any vision. They're purely cynical, money grubbing.
I think that the difference is when the original movies came out and they were looking to expand the universe, it was just Lucasfilm. And they were like, okay, let's get an author in and see if he has any ideas for a science fiction
exactly.
book.
And
that's
also
what they did.
because George Lucas didn't really have an idea of what he was going to do next, he's just like, it was almost like a licensing agreement. It was just like,
Yeah, exactly.
If these authors want to make stories, they can do whatever they want. They just can't show this and they can't show this, and otherwise go nuts.
Yeah, and we
And
got some pretty good
some
material.
we got some terrible stuff, but we got some of the greatest, Star Wars material ever. But yeah, like they should have been there from the beginning. Even Lando. Why have I know Lando was introduced like in the second movie of the original trilogy, but he's a core character, and in the EU he becomes part of the main crew.
Yeah, he does.
Like
yeah.
at the start of Dark Empire, at the start of the Thrawn trilogy, he's just there with the rest of the crew.
Why would he be? Yeah.
And he helps. Why wouldn't he be? So like, stop using why are they using the original trilogy characters as a gimmick? Like they're always like,
Okay. You know what? I'll tell you the answer as I see it, and it's a very cynical one.
Yeah.
They don't care about the originals.
They don't care.
That's why they want the new blood. They want people to focus on the fresh faces.
Yeah.
Which
They don't care and they don't understand.
from a marketing perspective, if you're trying to appeal to a 12 or 13-year-old individual who hasn't really seen the originals, don't really care about them, you're not going to say, here's 50-something-year-old Mark Hamill. Look, everybody, it's Luke.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, here's Daisy Ridley. She's Rey.
Yeah.
She's new. She has the Force. Like, so I kind of understand that, but it's like you said, because they don't care about the original movies, they kind of just want to push them to the side.
But Creed did the best thing possible with that. They're like, here's the new guy. Here's the young hot guy. Here's Michael B. Jordan. But he's the son of Apollo Creed, and he's going to get trained by Rocky.
It's also a lot simpler of a story, though, to be fair.
But true, but the bones there, the Cobra Kai, the bones are there, the structure is there, and Force Awakens and the other movies, it's like they don't know how to write these movies, they don't know how to structure them.
And on the front of, as you said, Callum, they want the new fresh faces to be the stars. They did a shit job of doing that too.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
That was my next point. Is like they don't flesh out the new characters either, and so we're left with these cardboard cutouts who are just along for the ride.
Yeah.
And even John Boyega, we've talked about, he's been tweeting and saying,
They did him dirty.
Yeah, it's like he says, like, I do feel even after the 3 films, we still don't know as much about the new characters as we did about Han, Luke, and Leia.
Yeah.
He's right. Like, we don't know anything about the new characters.
It's because they're too focused on action scenes rather than character building.
Yeah, we talked about this at length in Last Jedi. It's like, Rian Johnson was trying so hard to be like, kill the past, let's bring in the new characters and build for the future. But then he kind of just ignores the new characters. He sends Finn and Rose off on a weird adventure in the casino planet. And Daisy really does... Rey does nothing. And it's like, these are the new characters you should be developing.
Yeah, why are you wasting time?
Yeah, and then like Leia gets put in a coma, and then Holdo. So it's like, oh, so Holdo is our new Leia. Like she's taking it. She gets killed off. So it's like, who am I supposed to be rooting for here? Like who is my new characters, and where are my old characters aren't there? Yeah. My new characters aren't interesting or being developed. It's a joke. But yeah, so the third movie, of course, was supposed to be Leia's movie, but then Carrie Fisher unfortunately passed away. And that, completely ruined their plan. But as I said, it shouldn't have been their plan to do that gimmicky shit. She should have just been there at the beginning.
They should have got all that out of the way as soon as possible.
Exactly. Set it up at the beginning. She's part of the New Republic Senate. Luke starting his new school. And Han's there. Maybe he's a general. Maybe he's retired. But he's still around doing
Maybe he's
cool
running
shit.
drugs again. You don't know.
Yeah, Spice. But you know what I'm saying? Like, just get that out of the way, and now you can develop the new characters and tell the new story.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't make it a gimmick. And I think the third movie was supposed to be like Leia bringing Kylo back to the good side, the light side. But of course they couldn't do that. But they still tried to shoehorn that in with her like calling out to him, and then her dying, and then them fading away at the same time. But I'm like, at that point, your plan's already ruined. So maybe you should have tried something else.
Yeah.
Because you've already fucked up this far. And this is, again, goes back to our argument of, was it JJ's fault? Was it Disney's fault? Was it Ryan's fault? It's everyone's fault. Because no one talked to each other. No one knew what they were doing. And no one put their foot down and said, look, I know you want this to be Leia's movie, but Carrie Fisher's gone. We have to move on. They have to make hard decisions. Filmmaking is a lot of compromise. Even the greatest films ever made have been just full of compromise.
Even David Lynch?
Even David Lynch. Because there are the things even David Lynch can't do as much as he wants to. So at the end of it all, like, there has to be some sort of cohesive vision that is... That
like a core.
Yeah, a core. And then, there's compromises made. There are things you have to cut out. There are things you can't show. There are budget restrictions. There are time restrictions. But at the end of it all, the greatest films ever made, still the core, the passion, the vision.
The spirit.
The spirit shines through. And these movies are just soulless crap. Sort of extending on from the Boyega's point... the quote-unquote romance in the new movies has, as I said, like last episode and the other episodes, like the romance is so cold and distant and weird, and they clearly don't know what they're doing. Just like with the original trilogy characters, just like with the new characters, they don't know how to develop them. They don't know where they're going. They don't know where they came from. And so how are you supposed to have a romance between characters who don't talk to each other, who don't have things in common, who don't... who don't work alongside each other.
And the best romance in the movie was censored because it wouldn't be appropriate for all regions. Finn and Poe.
Well, and that's the thing. Why wasn't that developed? And we discussed that at length last episode. But yeah, it's like it's funny that then they're pushing the whole Rey and Kylo thing, which is just weird. I
think you're a meme. Do you remember the X-Men meme?
Carlton linked me a meme of like Cyclops and Jean Grey like kissing in the corner, and just
there's Wolverine in
the distance, just awkwardly standing there. And and above Cyclops and Jean Grey, it says like Rey and Kylo, and Wolverine. It says like Finn,
who has never butchered people. Or whatever.
It's just awkwardly, sadly standing there. And even John Boyega tweeted like 4-panel picture of like, and I think the caption was just like romance in quotes or something, or romance in Star Wars or something.
Yeah.
And it was like Kylo stabbing a guy, Rey stabbing Kylo, and then like Rey and Kylo doing something else terrible, and then their kiss at the end. And it's like, it's that kind of just weird, completely out of touch. And again, who do we blame? Do we blame JJ? Do we blame Disney? I'm like, this is JJ's problem that he set up in Force Awakens, and this is Rian Johnson's problem that he continued in Last Jedi. Like, Rey and Poe don't even meet until the end of Last Jedi.
That's kind of weird.
And then they have this weird like love triangle chemistry thing that I think they're trying to play off in Rise of Skywalker. I'm like, why is that even there? And then you get Zori in to be Poe's ex-girlfriend or whatever. I was like, why? Just have her and Finn be a thing if you're gonna.
Yeah.
Oh, but then you have to play off Rey and Kylo. I'm like, but you can't play off them because they clearly. Fucking, what a joke.
Yeah.
It really should have been Finn is like obviously in love with both Rey and Poe, and like it should have been his love story of like how he's trying to live that bisexual lifestyle, but he's having trouble because
that would have been interesting.
Meanwhile, Lando's off with a robot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, though, honestly,
later that could be his daughter towards the end.
honestly, though, I think it would have been better if it was just flat out him and Poe.
Yeah,
Like,
No,
don't even,
that would have been the best
like,
option.
no justification,
Yeah.
no defense, just two dudes who love each other.
That would have been
Film
the
ban
best.
in China, but who cares?
Yeah, that would have been the best option. But you see what I'm saying is like Rey and Finn, I think from the beginning were set up as maybe being a thing. But then the way that relationship went was so weird and cold and distant.
Yeah.
And especially because then they introduced like out of nowhere like Finn might be force sensitive, and it's like, well, maybe JJ was, if he did the second movie, he was going to have them come together and train with Luke or something. Like, so this whole thing is this huge mess that has a ripple effect throughout not just the 3 movies, but like...
Yeah.
And that brings me to my next point. The fact that this is supposed to be the end of the quote-unquote Skywalker saga, and yet it's not even an ending to this trilogy itself.
No, that's right.
Because as we discussed many times, like The Force Awakens reboots everything, then The Last Jedi reboots everything again, and then The Rise of Skywalker has to introduce everything and tie everything up at the same time, while also pretending to be the ending of 9 movies.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's because of how badly this trilogy's gone, it's like they didn't set anything up in the first 2 movies of the trilogy. Now they have to introduce everything at the end of the trilogy and tie everything up, and then also pretend that it's the end of the 9-movie saga.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that it's the quote-unquote Skywalker saga, and yet, as we discussed, they turn the original characters into gimmicks. They turn Luke into cynical, grumpy old hermit.
Jake Skywalker, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, as much as I hate the prequels, you can argue that they do start Anakin's story, and then his son takes over in the original trilogy story, and then Anakin sacrifices himself at the end of Return of the Jedi. And so it kind of that's some sort
It's
of
an arc.
Yeah. Whereas in this movie starts, it's like, well, Rey's a nobody. Kylo's a solo with technically Skywalker blood because Leia.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, Finn's no one, Poe's no one, and Luke is absent. And so it doesn't carry on with that Skywalker story.
No.
So it's not the end of a Skywalker saga. The Skywalker saga was episode 1 to 6.
Yeah, and then kind of like what, 8 and 9 in a way.
No, not 8 and 9 at all.
No,
Right,
I mean
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Is that because Luke, they corrupted Luke's character because Luke was absent from 7, he was corrupted in 8, and then he's pretty much absent from 9, and the new characters aren't connected to the Skywalkers in any real meaningful way. And Leia's gone, and Han's gone, and Kylo, as we discussed, is the only one with real Skywalker blood, but he's the bad guy, so we have to kill him off.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take on the Skywalker legacy. Like, it doesn't continue that story. And it also doesn't continue any story of the new characters either.
Can I say how ironic it is as well? As like we say, it kind of doesn't continue on the Skywalker saga, and yet the final line of the movie,
Yeah.
of the rise of Skywalker,
Yeah.
is some random lady goes, "What's
Yeah.
your name?" And in Star Wars, we can assume that most people don't really care about surnames because it's Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's fantasy. She goes, "No, what's your?" She goes, "Oh, my name's Rey," and then the lady goes, "No, your last name."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Skywalker."
Yeah. It's a token gesture at the very end of this trilogy to be like, see, that's what I was setting up.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. It's actually about an adoptive Skywalker continuing the legacy. It's like, no, you haven't set that up. You haven't developed that.
Adopted Skywalker, you say, and yet she kissed Kylo.
But that's Star Wars tradition.
But yeah,
that's the incest subversion going on.
Yeah. But you know what I mean.
Japanese style incest, though.
That's what I mean. Is like, if you're gonna make a trilogy tying up the Skywalker saga, again, like I always said, start the movie with Rey Skywalker. You know, Luke's kids.
Yeah.
Continue that, and then you can end the trilogy and say, well, that's the ending of that arc.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So Kylo's actual name was Ben Solo, right?
Yeah.
So how the fuck did he become Kylo Ren?
Ren's like his Sith name.
Yeah. When
where'd the Kylo come from?
It's all off screen. It's all not explained. It's not explored. There's some comics and novels about it, but at some point when he got turned to the dark side by Snoke, he adopted the Kylo Ren name, and then there were the Knights of Ren, who were assumedly Snoke's students. I don't know; it's not explained. And the Ren is like, it's like their Darth kind of equivalent. And Kylo was J.J. Abrams thinking he's a smarty by combining Skywalker and Solo. Kylo.
Okay.
It's a dumb name, and it's never explained. I mean, Vader is never explained, but that's not a problem. My biggest problem is that his name's Ben, when really Leia didn't have any connection to Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And as we discussed last episode, like in the original EU, Luke's son is named Ben Skywalker,
sense.
because that makes sense.
Yeah.
And again,
Even why couldn't they call him Jason?
but that's the thing is they don't want to.
I'm not talking about the traditional spelling. I'm talking about the Star Wars spelling.
Yeah, it's this. It was in the original EU. Leia has twins, Jaina and Jason.
Okay.
And then she has a third son, or second son, third child name, and she calls him Anakin.
Of course.
So I guess But anyway, but again, they don't have to take the names.
But it's like,
it's like, why call him Ben? It doesn't make sense. Again, he should have just been Ben Skywalker, Luke's son.
yeah,
Don't screw around.
yeah.
It writes itself.
No, it does.
But then I had, we were talking about, we talked a lot about, Rian Johnson deliberately ruined Star Wars. He deliberately threw everything out the window and was like, I'm going to show these nerds what's what.
Yeah.
And like, I think this.
It was a good prank. Like on his deathbed, he's like, tell the Star Wars fans I did it for the lols.
He ruined Star Wars, just a prank, bro.
It's just a prank, bro. But like, it's funny. It's funny to think about. Like we've been talking about a lot. Like, whose fault is it? What has JJ gone insane? And it's like, I started to question whether JJ deliberately ruined Star Wars on purpose in Rise of Skywalker.
I kind of get it's like he was spilled milk attitude kind of thing. It's like, well, he broke my toys.
Exactly. We talked about it. If I can't have it, no one can.
Yeah,
have
exactly.
It.
It's like,
we talked about I think it's an extension of that.
It's like if all of my story is going to be wasted, I'm just going to have no boundaries and I don't care anymore.
Just do whatever I want. And then you get the Disney problem of they still have boxes they need to check, and they want to appease so many different people. But again, I've said this many times. It all comes, as much as I hate on Last Jedi, it comes back to The Force Awakens, all that mystery box bullshit, JJ setting things up no one would ever pay off, or no one would even know to have paid off. And then, of course, trying to end it all, but also doing whatever the fuck he was trying to do, and throwing everything in there. And he's like with his Star Trek movies, like with Lost, like with Alias, and even Felicity, his show he had, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, especially when it comes to endings. He might know how to set up a mystery in the beginning, but he doesn't know where he's going with it. And when it comes to the ending, he's just like, fuck it.
Yeah.
So the guy who started the trilogy didn't know what he was doing, and the same guy who ended the trilogy didn't know what he was doing. He was the worst guy for the job, which I said from the very beginning when they hired him. Before Force Awakens even came out, I was like, don't give it to that guy. He's the boring, safe choice.
That's why they chose him.
And that's why they chose him, and that's the reason we're in this situation now. Fuck Disney.
Yeah, fuck Disney.
Yeah,
And fuck China.
fuck China. Free Hong Kong.
Free Tibet. Sorry.
Yeah, also that.
They need more integrity.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about like what's the deal with Palpatine's son? Like that was just thrown in. That was thrown in at the end.
I know.
Just
like,
a random dude.
Just a random guy who's never, So it's like that's fucking interesting. Like what the hell happened? Was he?
what kind of life did he lead?
Yeah. Like also this implies that Palpatine fucked some poor lady. Like what?
Hey, Palpatine's
Also-
always fucked, and he always will.
You think the Sith don't have access to mind control?
Yeah, that's true. He could have mind tricked her.
He's a
This is. I don't want to talk about this, but you see what I'm saying, right? If you're gonna drop this shit in right at the end of the trilogy and just pull it out of your ass,
Yeah.
it implies so many things that has a ripple effect throughout the whole 9 movies.
yeah.
I wonder what his relationship with his dad was like.
Shitty.
But see, like that's like, why wasn't the movie about that? That's an interesting movie.
I know. It's like fucking Days of Our Lives.
But see, J.J. Abrams probably didn't even have that idea. He was like, "Oh, Snoke's my new bad guy," and then
'Cause
Ryan
Palpatine-
Johnson fucked that up.
It
And
would've
he's like, "Well, I have to bring Palpatine back." And then there's rumors that Disney actually wanted Palpatine back, and J.J. Abrams didn't. And so it's just like,
It would have been a Hugh Hefner situation because he would have been already been ancient when he had the son.
Actually, you know what? Can I say I'm going to retract my forced mind control comment because I reckon we're making it too complicated. Right? He fucked because he was incredibly wealthy.
and
well,
powerful.
this is also the other thing. It's depending on how. Nah, yeah, it's fucked.
The
Either way,
question of
any
the
way you
film's
think about it, it's
physiology
fucked.
of the situation as well.
It could be a clone. It could be a son.
Nah.
But then, if they were going to do that, then they should have just been Rey as his clone.
Why are we
Yeah,
wasting our precious time talking about whether
but that's-
Palpatine fucks or not?
Yeah, no, it's just
It's when you bring that in as a key kind of a thing to your story.
Exactly. We talked about this Last Jedi. It's like the little nitpicky plot holes, I don't mind. But if you're going to do so many stupid things and they're going to happen in every scene, it raises so many questions that ripples and has ripple effects throughout the whole saga that it ruins everything. Like you can't, it's not just, that was a great movie, but that bit didn't make sense. It's like
Yeah.
every little piece falls apart until even movies not that you didn't make fall apart.
Yeah.
Nothing makes sense after that. Also, we talked about this, I think, when the teaser trailer came out. Palpatine, Sheev, he's a meme. Prequel memes started off as a joke and now are for people who genuinely love the prequels and who think it's great. And I think bringing Palpatine back, especially if it was Disney's choice and not J.J. Abrams, it feels very...
they can capitalize on the memes.
Exactly. It feels very cynical, people love the prequel jokes about Sheev, let's bring him... Not that they were even aware of that. They were all a bunch of old rich men who don't know about the internet. But you know what I mean? It feels like that decision. It's not just, remember Sheev. It's haha, funny memes. The prequels actually weren't that bad, haha, It's that thing. And Rise of Skywalker feels much more prequel-y than Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. I think they even take lines from I think the Emperor even says lines from that he does in Revenge of the Sith and stuff.
Is there a reference to sand?
I don't remember.
I feel like there was a line about sand, and I was like, because the famous line. I sand.
I wouldn't be surprised. There's a lot of lines in Rise of Skywalker that felt very prequel-y or that were directly taken from the prequels. There's definitely lines that the Emperor says that he was saying to Anakin in Revenge of the Sith and stuff. So it's very
unlimited power type
stuff
material.
like that. Yeah. He's the meme version of the Emperor. And this kind of leads on to something that might be controversial with a lot of Mandalorian fans, but even though The Mandalorian is not bad and I like it, it takes a lot of prequel bullshit into account. And we've talked about this before, where the prequels ruined what the Force is, they ruined Jedis, they ruined Star Wars to the extent where, because they're canon, the Disney has to take them into account. Yeah. And so everything is now tainted. And so, we talked about how ridiculous the Force was and, all the crazy shit that happens. And that kind of carries over even into something like The Mandalorian, which should be much more of a straightforward show, ends up dealing with a lot of that crazy Force powers and lightsabers and shit, which we don't want. I think, and it's like I said, Disney Star Wars will always have the same problems, no matter the format, no matter if it's comic books, video games, TV shows. Like, it's fucked up beyond all repair. Like, there's no coming back from it. And like we talked about in last episode, the public perception of what the Force can do, what the franchise was originally supposed to be,
it's magical powers now.
Yeah, like what's canon, what's not canon. It's forever changed. Yeah, and it's forever changed for the worst. Mm-hmm. And you'll never be able to make a good Star Wars property ever again.
Not unless someone who actually cares about the originals and understands them gets completely free and unfettered access to do what they want, which will not happen.
Disney would have to lose the rights.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone who has unlimited resources.
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, exactly. Someone who has complete creative control would have to come in, and they would have to ignore the last 25 years. But as we've discussed, I think on the Last Jedi episode, maybe in the Force Awakens episode, it's in people's psyche now.
Yeah, it's the zeitgeist.
Yeah, and like I always said,
it's kids, in the culture.
Yeah, kids have grown up with it, and people like us who try to block the prequels from our memories and try to block the sequels from our memories, it's still deep in us somewhere, like the dark side, bubbling up. It's always going to be there. So it's done. Star Wars is dead. You can't repair it. You can't do anything.
All you can do is parody pornos. I think that's the best you're going to get.
But that's the thing I've always complained about the Disney stuff is like they feel like parodies. They feel like Spaceballs. They feel like cheap porno rip-offs. Like everything's so fake.
The kind of jokes they put in there we talked about on the Force Awakens and the Last Jedi reviews. It's like the kind of the humor that doesn't fit.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, man.
Exactly.
Like, don't get me wrong. I thought the scene towards the end of Rise of the Skywalker, where the Rise, I keep getting that name.
Yeah, no, it's a dumb name.
Towards the end of Skywalker, where Poe makes the face at that lady. I'm like, I thought that was funny.
Yeah,
I thought that was funny, but it's not. That shouldn't be in Star Wars.
Yeah, it didn't really feel like a Star Wars thing. It was very much a.
It's like your mama jokes. Yeah. It's like your mama jokes.
Yeah, I remember in Force Awakens where they're running around the Millennium Falcon and Finn's like to Rey, you got a boyfriend, cute boyfriend.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not Star Wars, man. Get that shit out of here. And then like something happens and BB-8 saves them and Finn gives him thumbs up and BB-8 does like a lighter. And like it looks like, and I was just like, "Fuck this movie, man!" But people love that shit. Yeah. They're like, "Oh, they go fucking rabbit." But anyway, continuing on, sort of from that point, is like Jon Favreau, who's show running The Mandalorian, has like written all the episodes, and he feels like they're kind of maybe, I don't know if they're going to do it, but it feels like they might try to use him as their Kevin Feige.
Yeah, and
it's like he's going to oversee everything. But if I'm not mistaken, they announced that Kevin Feige himself is going to oversee some Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Kevin Feige is good for Marvel.
Yeah, but
will he be good for Star Wars? Who knows?
That's what I was going to say. Is we talked about this last episode and probably in other episodes where it's like what you did with Marvel makes sense because of comic books. You can't just turn Star Wars into the MCU. It doesn't work. But as we discussed, I think earlier in this episode, now that the Skywalker saga is done, they can fully turn Star Wars into the MCU.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be interconnected. Everything's going to be about prequel-y bullshit. And when we do the Mandalorian Season 1 review, we'll talk about that. About how the coming seasons, the Obi-Wan show, the new movies coming in the future, are all going to be this Marvel Factory kind of, safe superhero movies.
Yeah.
More so than they've already been. So yeah, as enjoyable as Mandalorian was, it has a lot of problems, and Jon Favreau and Kevin Feige aren't the answer to fix. And like I said, the damage has been done. You can't fix it. Everything's shit now.
Yeah, basically.
Australia's on fire. Star Wars sucks.
The only thing I'm
so fucking tired.
The only thing I'm looking forward to is after Disney get tired of Star Wars, if they ever get tired of Star Wars, all the books that'll come out when they're like, whatever, who cares? Just make books and comics and shit. I'm like,
look, one thing I will say, and one of the reasons I want to continue doing Star Wars episodes in the future, is that now that like we're at this point where I'm just like completely like fuck it. Like I thought I was fuck it after Last Jedi, but I'm truly like fuck it now.
No, because it's finished now.
Yeah, but like I think I'm kind of having fun now because it's like looking back on all the stuff and
yeah.
But it's also like it's renewed my love for the EU.
Yeah,
I always loved the EU, but now I'm just doubling down on it. I'm like, the other day I went to like one of those collectible stores. I pretty much found all of the new Jedi Order books. I bought them all.
Not bad. Jesus.
Cost me $200, but I was like, rather dump $200 on 20 books.
Oh yeah, God.
Now, then like slowly have to buy $20 here, $15 here over the next course of.
How'd
the
you
next
get that
years.
home?
In a big ass bag. No, I drove there. So, but you know, like
okay. I was being on a train with like a bag full of Star Wars books.
I was like to the guy, I'm like, I'll go to the car and get a bag. He's like, no, I got a bag. I'm like, are you sure? And he pulls out this giant thing. But you know, like when we'll talk about this next episode where we talk about like fixing the Star Wars movies and what we would do and what the EU did. Like I'm kind of having fun. I'm rereading. Like I said, I reread some of the stuff. I'm rereading some of the other stuff. You know, I'm putting out all my figures now. My dad's got this glass cabinet that he got.
Oh, yeah.
Putting out all my old figures. I'm like, you know what? I still love Star Wars. Yeah, because at the end of the day...
Just not the Disney
At the end of the day, like 1977 to like 1997, that's... You know,
pretty fucking good. Yeah.
You know, Rian Johnson, don't kill the past because the past was, you know, that was the only good stuff.
Yeah, there were some really good adventures in the Star Wars books.
Oh yeah,
like not even before it got all crazy. I'm talking like Truce at Bakura.
Yeah,
even the ones with Han and Leia. What's that one? The Courtship of Princess Leia, and the other one.
We'll talk about this probably next episode, where there's so much bad shit, but there's so much good shit.
But even the bad shit's probably not as bad as what we've got.
Exactly, and the bad shit, it's not that bad. So I mean, maybe we'll end up this episode, and maybe next week we'll come back and we'll do like an EU and like fixing Star Wars, what we would do. But like, I just want to like talk about the EU for a bit, and like, you know, like we joked before about Kathleen Kennedy like literally saying like, there's no novels or comic books to go off of, and I'm like, if you're out there and you hate the new Star Wars stuff as much as we do, and you haven't really explored the EU, the expanded universe from the 90s, like definitely check it out.
I'd also be interested in seeing what people who love the new Star Wars think of the old EU. Like
they probably would find it dull.
Will it blow their minds, or would it be like? Will they be like, it stinks?
It's hard to tell. Like they probably would find it dull because it's more in line with what original Star Wars is, which I think, like we talked about, people now find that quaint.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, if you found that quaint, this new stuff isn't Star Wars, and so it shouldn't exist.
Yeah,
like if you don't want to make a Star Wars in line with the originals, then make an original film, like making a completely unrelated, but they need brand recognition. But yeah, like, you know, Thrawn trilogy, Dark Empire, we already talked about, Crimson Empire, the Jedi Academy trilogy, New Jedi Order stuff. Like this carries on from end of Return of the Jedi to like 40 years after.
Yeah.
Like, and it goes in some crazy directions and does some dumb stuff, but it takes it in a logical direction. And there's a lot of great stuff, a lot of great characters.
Yeah. Also, a lot of great video games.
Oh yeah, not even talking about that. I'm just talking about the novels.
There's still some good video games now if you can ignore a few things.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about that.
If you can ignore Saw Gerrera, it's fine.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I was saying. Is from now on, all stuff is tainted. All stuff is shit. I don't care. Like I enjoy The Mandalorian. I'll watch season 2, but it's full of dumb shit that I hate.
I mean, I'm not sure I talked about it on this show or Sunrise Arcade, where we talked about Jedi Fallen Order and how the game is a masterpiece. But there's Saw Gerrera, and I don't like it.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's always gonna be a taint, you know, to it.
That's why we need to change gears and start kicking people in the taint for doing wrong things.
At the end of Dark Empire, Luke has a vision of Leia's 3 children, who are still infants at the time.
Yeah.
And he like looks up and he has like a vision of like 3 Jedi Knights with lightsabers, and he's like, "Don't worry, everyone. The future is bright." And it's like that to me was Star Wars, you know, that
little did he know.
And it's like, and now we're here yelling and screaming and swearing about, I would argue, some of the worst movies ever made.
Yeah.
And like, that's why it's kind of renewed my love for the EU. It's like that vision of the Solo children.
Yeah.
Like
the hopefulness.
That's what I love about Star Wars, you know? That's what I want for Star Wars. So, and we'll talk about this next week, but, you know, in hindsight, you can go back and cherry pick out all the good things and they could have made a great trilogy.
Yeah, absolutely, a great trilogy.
You know, so it's even like Rey. At the end of Rise of Skywalker, Rey takes the Skywalker name, and assumedly she's going to teach the next generation of Jedi. It's like, why was that necessary when that's what Luke was doing?
Yeah, exactly.
But also, like, how is she going to teach them? Because she just innately knows magic.
Yeah, she has the books.
Yeah, and it's like...
makes her a master.
It's like, it makes no sense, and it comes right at the end of the trilogy. It's like, they needed to develop that from the beginning of the trilogy, but it's like, I don't even care that she's that powerful. You know, they try to explain it away where, oh, she's a Palpatine. I'm like, no, that's a dumb thing. I'm like, the problem was, from the very beginning, wasn't that she was so powerful. It was that she had no struggle. There was no tension.
She was a demigod.
She had no
there was no growth.
Yeah, and she had no growth because she was already a god.
Max, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like in the EU, some of the force powers get really ridiculous. And, you know, the Solo children go on completely wild tangents of character development and crazy stuff happens. But that happens over like 25 books and like 40 years in canon, in the timeline.
Yeah.
So, like, if you made Rey at the start develop her powers until she was a god at the end of Rise of Skywalker, that would have been dumb, but it's like at least you have a short development time.
Yeah.
But she's a god at the start of
Yeah, she gets captured and she's like doing the Jedi mind trick like, straight away, and like that's canonically used to be one of the most difficult Jedi tricks.
Yeah. So it's like they had like I'm repeating myself, but they had all this rich, fertile ground. Yeah. They could cherry pick they could take out all the bad stuff and keep all the good stuff. They could rename it. No one would. I mean, some people would complain, but no one would really mind.
I mean, we'll talk about this at length when we talk about like what we would do to fix it or whatever. Yeah. But for me, as a layperson, right, I would have done something so simple that they wouldn't even think about it. Right, I would have said, okay, you want to time skip, whatever.
Yeah.
But the first trilogy in the new Star Wars movies is the Thrawn trilogy. Right?
Yeah,
but just adapt the books, even if you don't have an original.
But we talked about this last week, where it's like the Thrawn trilogy takes place like 5 years after Return of the Jedi. Just move that forward like to 30 years,
exactly.
rename some things, change a few elements, go.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you start there because it's familiar to people from the old
and
it
makes
canon.
Sense. Yeah,
it makes sense. And then if you want to do another trilogy, you can start with Vector Prime. You know what I mean? Like again, you remove a lot. You remove a lot from in between books.
Like we talked about last week, it's like if you are going to remove all that stuff, but make sure you have your own separate alternate timeline that makes sense. So you're not just skipping randomly. Yeah,
I wouldn't have been mad at all if they were like, "Look, we're just going to do the best bits of." Yeah. Like the old canons, and we're gonna, you know what I mean, like the best story arcs.
Yeah.
So we'll have one trilogy here, one trilogy there, or whatever. I'd be like, I understand that.
Yeah.
Like, why waste all the good stuff that's come before? Not that, like, you know, I do believe it's important to have original stories, but if they're at such pains, they can't come up with anything.
If they can't,
well, shit, why are you wasting all this stuff then?
Yeah.
You decanonized it and then complained you didn't have anything.
Yeah. And replaced it with bullshit.
Yeah,
don't wipe the slate clean and go like, oh, thank God, breath of fresh air, we can start over, and then replace it with dumb bullshit that doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like you might as well have just used it.
Yeah, and it would have been much better. Like those books, at least the Thrawn trilogy books, magnificent.
Yeah.
It's like you can't fuck. I'm sure they'd find a way.
Oh,
but
yeah, they're definitely fucking up.
Like adapt the screenplay well enough, and at least the story's good. Even if you do fucking shitty CGI and puppets everywhere, bad puppets, I should say.
Yeah, because we love puppets.
Yeah, we do love puppets. But you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll end this episode up, and maybe we'll come back next week. But I keep saying like Star Wars is dead. Fuck it, it's gone.
Long live the old Star Wars.
Yeah, long live old Star Wars. But it's like, I have a bad feeling about this. And it's on one hand, it's like wishful thinking. And on the other hand, it's like nightmarish scenario where it would be really cool if for Disney Plus, they did like a what if, like, you know how they're doing that Marvel what if?
Yeah.
Like, what if they adapted some of the old EU, the Legends storylines, but in just like fun animated little movies or
voiced
shows.
by the like maybe Mark Hamill could voice the little cartoon Luke.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd love to do that. Yeah. Harrison Ford, you need to get a sound alike, and Carrie Fisher, you don't have to get a sound alike. But that will be fun. But they'd find a way to fuck it up.
Oh yeah.
So on the one hand, that's like my wishful thinking. That's never going to happen. But if it did happen, and it feels like a very cynical play, from Disney, you know, and it feels like they'd fuck it up.
That's going to be great. So they're going to have the next trilogy, right? And it's going to be like Finn and Rey's multiracial child, who's like the bad guy who's been influenced by Darth Plagueis the Wise, and the kid at the end of in the end of The Last Jedi, who is force sensitive, how he pulls that broom.
The broom.
He's going to be the nobody that like rises up, and it's going to be great.
Stop! They're listening. What are you doing?
I remember when what was that Curse of the Golden Child? Yeah, and everyone's complaining like it's bullshit, and you know Voldemort comes back from the dead. I'm like, this is the same shit they're doing. But yeah, they'll probably do that. In 10 years, they'll do Curse of the Golden Jedi or something.
3 movies, a few $1 billion, you know?
Yeah. And it'll make money. It'll always make money.
Send us a check.
I think, like, see, this is we've talked about this before. This is the rock and a hard place we're in, where it's like, do we not spend money on it and not talk about it on the show? Or do we talk about it on the show?
We hate ourselves enough to go watch them.
Like, I feel like we kind of have to.
Yeah.
Maybe from I won't say definitively, but I'm like maybe from now on we'll wait. No, we probably won't. I don't fucking know.
You can't help yourself, James.
Maybe from now on we'll watch the film recorded in Chinese movie theaters versions.
Yeah, just watch the cam version with the people walking in front of the screen.
At least when they do it in China, they don't have to turn it off when the usher comes because everyone's doing it.
But yeah, fuck Star Wars, fuck Disney.
Yeah, Check out
depressing.
Check out the Legends canon.
Yeah, exactly. Check out those books I mentioned. We'll talk more about that next week. Yeah. Next week we'll come back and we'll talk about like what we would do with the new trilogy, how like you know the old EU, how things should have gone. Yeah, so
I'm still not nerding out next week.
Yeah, still not done with Star Wars. We'll never be done with Star Wars. You can't, you know.
That's the you're never done.
Yeah. No. All right. I think, Nathan, it's your turn.
Alrighty. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Tuesday Review AU and like the Facebook page. You can follow James on Instagram at Channel Drifter, where he talks about all the movies that we don't get to talk about on the show. You can find all of our previous episodes on your favourite podcasting app. If you like video games, please check out Sunrise Arcade, where Alan, Jake and myself talk about all video game news and reviews. You can also check out Car Talk, that's TORQUE, for all your automotive discussion with Matty J. Thank you for listening. Adios, cousins.